New details at a hearing for former head of the FBI, James Comey, who is charged with lying to and obstructing Congress. His lawyers argue that the case should be dismissed, raising questions about the actual indictment and saying the DOJ is carrying out President Trump's political revenge in what they are calling a vindictive prosecution. NewsNation's Tom Dempsey is live for us outside of the Virginia courthouse where this is all happening. Tom, the hearing is wrapped up. What happened inside that courtroom?
Hey, Nicole, like you said, this hearing all took place inside this courthouse behind me, this federal courthouse in Northern Virginia. The judge overseeing this case today against former FBI Director James Comey really pressing the prosecution in particular during the proceedings, which led to lead prosecutor Lindsay Halligan saying that the whole grand jury did not see the final indictment. Only at least one member, I think, saw the indictment, she said.
Federal court just exploded into absolute chaos as Judge William Fitzpatrick delivered one of the most scathing judicial rulings we've ever seen, exposing what he called a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps in Trump's prosecution of James Comey. And folks, what the judge uncovered is so damning that Trump is having a complete meltdown, attacking the judge on Truth Social and claiming this is all part of a judge-backed cover-up of the FBI's real crimes. But here's what's really happening. Judge Fitzpatrick just caught the Trump administration red-handed in what appears to be intentional government misconduct, including altering records, mishandling privileged evidence, and rushing through an emergency indictment to silence Trump's enemy. The cover-up Trump is screaming about isn't protecting Comey. It's exposing Trump's own corrupt prosecution scheme. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
And to CNN regarding former FBI Director James Comey and his fight to get his federal charges dismissed. Crime and Justice correspondent Caitlin Polans is right outside the federal courthouse. Caitlin, what happened in court?
Well, a startling discussion. Less than 1 minute of time passed with no silence in this courtroom as the judge was able to ask the question and got the Justice Department to admit the final indictment that James Comey now faces, the former FBI director. It was never shown to the full grand jury in this courthouse, and they did not approve it in full. They had voted down indicting Comey because they had been asked to approve 3 different charges against him. That indictment was a no from the grand jury, and then there was no further discussion with the prosecutors to bring about the indictment Comey now faces.
The specific misconduct Judge Fitzpatrick uncovered is absolutely shocking. We're talking about fundamental misstatements of law by Trump's prosecutors, missing sections of grand jury transcripts that mysteriously disappeared, and the illegal use of protected attorney-client communications to build their case. This isn't just sloppy prosecution. The judge is suggesting this is intentional misconduct designed to railroad an innocent man. When a federal judge uses language like disturbing pattern and profound investigative missteps, they're essentially saying the government is either criminally incompetent or deliberately corrupt. And either way, there are going to be serious consequences. What makes this even more explosive is the revelation about how this prosecution came to be. Court records show that a newly installed Trump administration prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, pressed the grand jury for an emergency indictment of Comey right after Trump demanded action on social media and ousted veteran prosecutors who apparently weren't willing to pursue this vindictive case. Think about that timeline. Trump tweets demands for prosecution, fires prosecutors who won't comply, installs a loyalist, and suddenly there's an emergency indictment full of misconduct. This isn't how justice works in America. This is how it works in dictatorships. Judge Fitzpatrick's response to this misconduct has been extraordinary and devastating for Trump's case. He's ordered the full grand jury transcript and all evidence to be handed over to Comey's defense team, which is almost unprecedented in federal court. This means every dirty trick, every piece of misconduct, every attempt to manipulate the grand jury is about to be exposed. The judge warned this could result in dismissal of all charges for prosecutorial abuse, which would be a humiliating defeat for Trump and could open up everyone involved to criminal prosecution themselves for their misconduct. Trump's reaction to being caught in this cover-up has been absolutely unhinged. He's not just attacking the prosecutors or the process. He's directly attacking Judge Fitzpatrick, calling the ruling part of a conspiracy to protect the deep state and blasting his own prosecutors as traitors protecting Biden. Let that sink in. The President of the United States is calling a federal judge corrupt and his own Justice Department prosecutors traitors because they got caught engaging in misconduct while trying to prosecute his enemy. This is the behavior of someone who knows they've been caught red-handed and is desperately trying to deflect blame. The timing of this judicial eruption couldn't be worse for Trump's broader agenda of using the Justice Department for revenge. This was supposed to be the showcase prosecution that proved the deep state was corrupt, and Trump was the victim. Instead, it's become a showcase of Trump's own corruption, with a federal judge documenting in detail how the administration perverted justice to pursue a political enemy. Every other vindictive prosecution Trump has planned is now in jeopardy because defense lawyers can point to this case and say, look what happens when Trump directs prosecutions: misconduct, altered evidence, and judicial sanctions. Let's examine the specific misconduct that has Judge Fitzpatrick so alarmed and Trump so panicked. The finding of fundamental misstatements of law isn't just about getting legal citations wrong. It means Trump's prosecutors either don't understand basic criminal law or they deliberately misstated it to deceive the grand jury into indicting Comey. When federal prosecutors, especially those handpicked by Trump, make fundamental legal errors in a high-profile political case, it raises serious questions about whether they're competent to practice law or whether they're deliberately lying to get the outcome Trump demands. The missing grand jury transcript sections are particularly damning because grand jury proceedings are supposed to be meticulously recorded and preserved. Sections don't just go missing accidentally. Someone has to deliberately remove or destroy them. The fact that portions of the transcript are mysteriously absent suggests that something happened in that grand jury room that Trump's prosecutors don't want anyone to see. Maybe exculpatory evidence was presented and ignored. Maybe prosecutors made improper statements. Maybe grand jurors asked questions that revealed the weakness of the case. Whatever is in those missing sections, it was apparently so damaging to the prosecution that someone made it disappear. The use of protected attorney-client communications is perhaps the most egregious misconduct of all. This is a fundamental violation of legal ethics and constitutional rights. Attorney-client privilege is sacred in our legal system, and prosecutors who violate it can face disbarment and criminal charges. The fact that Trump's prosecutors used privileged communications shows they were so desperate to get Comey that they were willing to violate the most basic principles of legal ethics. This isn't just misconduct, it's potentially criminal behavior by the prosecutors themselves. The revelation about Lindsay Halligan's role in rushing through an emergency indictment after Trump's social media demands is absolutely crucial to understanding this case. Here's the timeline. Trump tweets attacking Comey and demanding prosecution. Career prosecutors apparently resist or express concerns. Trump has them removed. Halligan is installed as the new prosecutor. Suddenly there's an emergency push for indictment, with corners cut and misconduct occurring. This pattern shows clear political influence over what should be an independent prosecutorial decision. It's exactly the kind of vindictive prosecution that judges are supposed to prevent. Judge Fitzpatrick's decision to order full disclosure of all grand jury materials to the defense is an extraordinary remedy that shows just how serious the misconduct is. Normally, grand jury proceedings are secret and defendants only get limited access to transcripts. By ordering complete disclosure, the judge is essentially saying the government's misconduct is so severe that normal rules don't apply. This will expose every questionable tactic, every improper statement, every piece of hidden evidence. It's a prosecutor's worst nightmare and a clear signal that the judge believes serious wrongdoing occurred. The warning that this could result in dismissal of all charges isn't just a threat. It's a likely outcome given what the judge has already found. Dismissal with prejudice for prosecutorial misconduct would mean the charges can never be refiled, Comey walks free, and everyone involved in the prosecution faces potential consequences. This wouldn't just be a loss for Trump. It would be a humiliating defeat that exposes his entire revenge prosecution scheme as corrupt and illegal. The precedent it would set could derail every other political prosecution Trump has planned. Trump's accusation that this is a judge-backed cover-up of FBI crimes is particularly rich given that the actual cover-up being exposed is by his own administration. The prosecutors tried to cover up their misconduct by hiding grand jury transcripts. They tried to cover up their political motivations by manufacturing an emergency. They tried to cover up their ethical violations by using privileged communications. The only cover-up here is Trump's attempt to hide his vindictive prosecution behind claims of fighting corruption. Judge Fitzpatrick isn't covering anything up. He's exposing everything. The broader pattern this reveals about the Trump Justice Department is deeply disturbing. If they're willing to engage in this level of misconduct to prosecute James Comey, what are they doing in cases that don't get this level of scrutiny? How many other prosecutions have involved altered evidence, missing transcripts, or violated privileges? How many innocent people have been railroaded by prosecutors more interested in pleasing Trump than pursuing justice? This case could trigger a review of every political prosecution the Trump administration has pursued. The involvement of Lindsay Halligan raises serious questions about her legal career and potential criminal liability. A prosecutor who rushes through an indictment full of misconduct after political pressure could face disbarment, civil lawsuits, and even criminal prosecution for obstruction of justice or violation of civil rights. Her career is likely over regardless of how this case ends, but she could face much worse if the full extent of the misconduct is exposed. She's learning the hard way that doing Trump's dirty work doesn't come with protection when you get caught. The implications of this judicial eruption extend far beyond just the Comey case. We're witnessing the complete collapse of Trump's plan to weaponize the Justice Department against his enemies. Judge Fitzpatrick hasn't just exposed misconduct in one case. He's revealed a systematic pattern of corruption that calls into question every prosecution Trump has directed or influenced. The disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps isn't limited to this case. It's likely symptomatic of how the entire Trump Justice Department operates when pursuing the president's enemies. This ruling could trigger a cascade of dismissals, investigations, and sanctions that completely derail Trump's revenge agenda. The political consequences for Trump are absolutely catastrophic. He came into office promising to drain the swamp and hold the deep state accountable, but instead, he's been exposed as the source of the corruption. Having a federal judge document prosecutorial misconduct, altered evidence, and vindictive prosecution in a case Trump personally demanded makes him look like exactly the kind of corrupt politician he claims to oppose. How can Trump maintain any credibility on law and order when his own handpicked prosecutors are getting caught breaking the law to pursue his enemies? For the Justice Department's credibility, this is an existential crisis. The revelation that prosecutors altered records, hid evidence, and violated attorney-client privilege destroys public trust in federal law enforcement. Every defense attorney in America can now point to this case when challenging federal prosecutions. Every judge will scrutinize DOJ cases more carefully. Every jury will wonder if prosecutors are being honest or if they're engaging in the same misconduct exposed in the Comey case. The damage to the institution could take decades to repair. Judge Fitzpatrick's courage in calling out this misconduct despite Trump's attacks deserves recognition. Federal judges have lifetime appointments precisely so they can stand up to corrupt presidents without fear of retaliation. By documenting the misconduct, ordering disclosure, and threatening dismissal, Judge Fitzpatrick is fulfilling his constitutional duty to ensure justice is done fairly and legally. His willingness to face Trump's wrath rather than allow prosecutorial corruption shows that at least some institutions are still functioning as intended. The fact that Trump is attacking his own prosecutors as traitors protecting Biden reveals his complete disconnect from reality. These are prosecutors he appointed or approved, working in his Justice Department, pursuing a case he demanded. If they're traitors, it's only because they got caught doing his dirty work so incompetently that even a federal judge couldn't ignore it. Trump's inability to take responsibility for the misconduct done on his behalf shows a level of delusion that's dangerous in someone with presidential power. The emergency nature of how this indictment was pursued raises alarming questions about what Trump was trying to hide or prevent. Why was it so urgent to indict Comey that prosecutors had to cut corners, violate ethics, and engage in misconduct? Was Comey about to reveal something damaging about Trump? Was this an attempt to silence or discredit him before he could speak out? The rushed timeline suggests panic and desperation rather than legitimate law enforcement purposes, which supports the vindictive prosecution theory. For James Comey personally, this ruling is complete vindication. He's maintained from the beginning that this prosecution was Trump's revenge for his role in investigating Russian interference and refusing to pledge loyalty to Trump. Having a federal judge essentially confirm this by finding profound investigative missteps and suggesting dismissal for prosecutorial misconduct validates everything Comey has been saying. He's likely to walk away from this not just free, but with grounds for a massive civil lawsuit against Trump and the prosecutors involved. The precedent being set here about judicial oversight of political prosecutions is crucial for American democracy. Judge Fitzpatrick is establishing that courts won't tolerate the use of criminal law for political revenge, that prosecutors who engage in misconduct will face consequences, and that even the president can't corrupt the justice system without accountability. This precedent will protect future political opponents, whistleblowers, and critics from vindictive prosecution. It's a vital check on authoritarian impulses that try to criminalize dissent. Looking at how this affects other Trump prosecutions, defense attorneys are already citing the Fitzpatrick ruling in motions to dismiss. If Trump's prosecutors engaged in this level of misconduct in the high-profile Comey case, what did they do in lower-profile cases that weren't getting as much attention? Every political prosecution, every case against Trump critics, every indictment that seemed motivated by revenge rather than justice is now suspect. The Comey case misconduct could be the thread that unravels Trump's entire prosecutorial agenda. The international implications of this scandal are significant for America's reputation. The world is watching a federal judge expose prosecutorial misconduct directed by the American president against political opponents. This is the kind of thing America used to criticize in other countries. The fact that it's happening here and that a judge is standing up to it sends mixed messages. Our system is corrupted enough for this to happen, but strong enough for judges to expose and stop it. It's a reminder that democracy requires constant vigilance against authoritarian corruption. The rush to indict after Trump's social media demands exposes the dangerous influence of Twitter and Truth Social on law enforcement decisions. When prosecutors feel pressured to file charges because the president is tweeting about it, the independence of law enforcement is compromised. This case shows that Trump's social media outbursts aren't just political theater, they're directives that his appointees feel obligated to follow, even if it means breaking the law. This dynamic is fundamentally incompatible with the rule of law. For the prosecutors involved, particularly Lindsay Halligan, the consequences are likely just beginning. Bar complaints are almost certain. Civil lawsuits from Comey are probable. Criminal investigation for obstruction of justice or civil rights violations is possible. Their legal careers are likely over, and they could face personal, financial ruin from lawsuits and legal fees. They're learning that doing Trump's bidding doesn't come with protection when the misconduct is exposed. Trump will throw them under the bus to save himself, just as he's already calling them traitors. As we watch this case implode, we're seeing what happens when political pressure meets judicial independence. Trump thought he could use the Justice Department as his personal vengeance machine, but Judge Fitzpatrick is showing that courts won't tolerate it. Every piece of misconduct exposed, every sanction imposed, every threat of dismissal reinforces that America is still a nation of laws, not men. The prosecution of James Comey isn't just failing, it's backfiring spectacularly, exposing Trump's corruption rather than Comey's. The desperation in Trump's attacks on Judge Fitzpatrick reveals how damaging this ruling is. When you're calling federal judges corrupt for exposing prosecutorial misconduct, you've lost the argument. When you're calling your own prosecutors traitors for getting caught, you've lost credibility. When your showcase prosecution becomes a showcase of your own corruption, you've lost everything. Trump's meltdown isn't just about losing a case. It's about losing the ability to use the justice system as a weapon. This story is far from over, but the trajectory is clear. The Comey prosecution is collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Judge Fitzpatrick's expose of profound investigative missteps has turned what was supposed to be Trump's revenge into Trump's humiliation. The misconduct is so severe that dismissal seems likely, and the consequences could extend far beyond this case to criminal investigations of everyone involved. Trump attacked Judge Fitzpatrick for exposing a cover-up, but the only cover-up here was Trump's attempt to hide his vindictive prosecution behind legitimate law enforcement. That cover-up has now been blown wide open, and the fallout is just beginning.